Hey guys, welcome to a new video. We're checking out the PBE today, and this is now Worlds time. So this is like the patch that the qualifiers to Worlds we played on according to Medler, the geezer at Riot who is in charge of balance and stuff. What that normally means is we get changes aimed at competitive play, so it gets kind of boring for us to be honest, but yeah, this is not really like that. I'm counting 23 champion changes so far with 3 mini reworks. What a juicy patch. Now I'm going to split these into 4 different areas to keep it easy. That way you can also skip to things if you want to. But as with all of my videos, the list of changes is in the description if you'd like to read them as you listen along. The big changes in the rework is going to be out first, and then we'll move on to the middle-sized buffs, and finally on to small buffs and small nerfs. So let's ease our way or ooze our way into the bigger changes with some nerfs to Zac. First up, the cost of his Q has been doubled to 8% of his current health. The cooldown of that is up a second as well. But also the W magic damage is down massively. So 15 to 75 from 30 to 90. That is gonna hurt. Even though the Q cost looks pretty nasty, I reckon it's actually the W change that will hurt his win rate even more. If you suddenly start doing like half damage at the start of a game, like the thing that you use to clear, right, the jungle with, he spams over and over, that is really bad. If this goes through, you using this spell 6 times to clear the jungle would be the same damage as using it 3 times as it is on live right now. That's really gonna screw up his early impact. If you can't kill stuff as fast, then you can't gank as much either, right? The Q is definitely going to hurt, but that W is what might put him in the dumpster, and it's about time, honestly. Now, remember what Riot said about, like, no big changes for the Worlds qualifiers, don't want to mess anything up or anything like that. Like, I wonder if somebody just sneaked this in to play a prank or something. Another UDYR mini rework thing is up, though, and it looks pretty legit. So your base move speed is up, which is nice, but the passive has been reworked, so when he changes stance during combat, it gains 4% attack speed, 4% cooldown reduction, and 6% base AD for 7 seconds. That can stack up to 5 times, so in total you'll be getting 20% attack speed, 20% cooldown reduction, and 30% base AD. This is entirely what the new UDYR is going to be about, right? Stacking up his passive and getting all these free stats. You kind of think of it like at the start of fights, right? He will not be doing that much damage or anything. He'll be pretty useless, just kind of like an annoying little bug, but the longer you fight him for, the more deadly he's going to become until he just gets ridiculous. It isn't just those free stats he actually gets though. So if we look at his Q, you get attack speed duration now for 6 seconds, which is up a little bit. The dot damage is now higher base damage, and the duration of that is 6 seconds from 2. The duration being up to 6 seconds is because they want us to swap stances a lot more to stack your passive, right? So the dot damage is still going as we stack up our passive with swaps, if that makes sense. There is a new thing on this though, which deals 6% bonus damage per passive stack up to 30% extra damage on the ability. That is gonna sting so bad. Like, I can seriously imagine having him even bend over Baron actually with this dot damage. I can imagine how good that would be. That is what I mean about the stacking as well, like with the passive. Like, you get the stuff from that passive, but then your skills do more damage as well. Your W and E are very slight changes, basically the same, but your actual Phoenix is going to be similar to Tiger. Up to 6 seconds of a duration, active and passive attacks now have an AD ratio where they were only AP before. 120% ratio for the active, which is really high. Deals damage to nearby people for 6 seconds, that's the active by the way, and 70% for the cone damage from your auto attacks. There is also the same thing as the Tiger, where it now deals 6% bonus damage per stack of your passive up to 30% extra. When I said AD ratio on that stance, it must have made the few UDYR mains watching this like completely cream. That is stupidly strong. As if that wasn't enough, you can do 30% bonus damage as well. Like, that is really good, but there's a few nasty synergies I can already see. You get rewarded for building some AD, right? It feeds into your abilities more. Think of it like it's feeding into the ratio to do it more anyway, but then that's increased by 30% on top. Like, that's not the real deal though. Trinity Force and Sterix is going to be the most broken thing, no doubt. And yeah, I know I throw around broken a bit too much, like that's rubbish and blah blah whatever. Just trust me, look at this. Sheen procs all of the time with 20% cooldown reduction, and you swapping stances to stack your passive all the time. You'll be constantly proccing your Sheen. Now if that wasn't enough, you gain 30% base AD from your passive, and base AD is what Sheen scales off. You're proccing Sheen all of the time, but now those procs are doing even more. Your Sterix also increases base AD, right? That's why you kind of pair the two together, plus gives you a shield to let you last stacking your passive. It's actually perfect. To put it into perspective as well, his passive, like the base AD that you get from that, is like a free Sterix worth of bonus Sheen damage. Tell me that is not going to be strong. I'm going to try and contain my hard-on for the new UDYR and move on to Nasus now. We talked about these the other day a little bit. His E arm reduction is now 15 to 35% rather than a flat amount, and your ultimate has this new thing on it where your Q has a 50% reduced cooldown when your ultimate is active. So your ultimate lasts for 15 seconds, and with 40% cooldown reduction, that is 1.1 second Q. As I said, we mentioned it in a video a few days ago, but it's actually a big deal and makes him like the ultimate tank buster. You've got to remember that yes, his ultimate change is awesome for Nasus, right? Plus Q is physical damage and your E removes 35% of armor now, so your Q does even more, plus you're using it more. It's not just for Nasus though, right? Like your AD carry is getting a free Last Whisper's worth of arm penetration on the enemy tank just from Nasus pressing E. Surely support Nasus will be really good now. You have your Wither to reduce attack speed, you have your E reducing armor, like you have the percentage damage from your ultimate, and you're just a massive tank. Like that seems like a really good support now. Moving on, Mundo has another mini rework. So your W has no initial cost, but it deals damage to himself per second as well as those around him. Roughly, it's about 40% of what you do to others as well that you're doing to yourself, which is really bad. Your E is also getting a little rework. It's a bit better than your W, trust me. Like there's no cost, but there's a new passive. When he takes magic damage, your magic resist is increased by 2% for 2 seconds, and that can stack up to a 30% bonus. The active has also been reworked, so your next basic attack deals 3% maximum health damage against the target, and also you gain up to 220 AD based on his missing health, but there is a minimum of 110 you would gain. So maybe I'm dumb, but an ability that makes me take 40% of the damage I deal does not really sound like a good idea. I get that's the whole idea behind him. I get he's a tank, so he should have more health than the target he's bashing, but come on, like he deals 60 damage at rank 1 and takes 25 of it back every second. What is that? His E will be doing some decent damage though, at least there's that. Like giving him at least 110 AD for 5 seconds, maybe up to 220. Honestly, screw it. I'm gonna play Bruiser, further battle Mundo if this happens. That is legit a crazy amount of AD and the most random add-on to an ability I've ever seen. So those are the big changes. Some pretty good, some not so good, but those are the ones that are going to impact champions the most, I think. We've also got some decent middle-sized buffs to look at. So Ezreal is the first one. Finally, we're getting buffs. It's not massive. His Q now has a 4.5 second cooldown at every rank rather than just rank 5. I think it makes it a bit better with tier stacking and stuff, right? But I bet you this could turn into a nerf, actually. Like, if you aren't that used to Ezreal or you're new to him, you'll spam your Q on cooldown just out of habit and run out of mana so fast now. Good old Rito is going to make his win rate actually drop even lower than it already is, if that's even possible. This is why I think it's purely aimed at pro play though. Like, it is a nice change if we can actually stack our tier up faster and hopefully get our Muramana transform sooner, which means we spike a bit earlier. It's kind of the biggest problem, honestly. Like, crit champions have a similar, like, kind of curve in the game to us. They scale in a similar way, but they just do it much better than us, so there's no point picking Ezreal. Another AD though, Sivir has kind of come up and down since the crit changes. Like, one day she's got a good win rate, next day not so much. She's actually not that bad though. Reason I've not stuck this in the small buffs is because you max this first and use it a lot. So 30 damage on something that you can spam from range is pretty decent, I think. It improves your wave clear a bit. It's better poke, better kill potential. It's actually a decent buff. Now on to Xerath. His slow duration is up to 25% on his W and the R damage is up a bit later. So this is here because even though the buffs are not that massive, I think people are sleeping on Xerath right now anyway. Maybe not in this Dustblade meta. I guess he doesn't have that much fun, but he's still a good champion to climb with, like high damage, high range, able to do a lot of work on his own. The main thing for me is actually the W, so it's going to help newer players be more effective. Like if you hit that right and you slow them by 25%, then your Q and E is much easier to land as well. Small things like this can actually have a really big impact because it can make your overall damage go way up, if that makes sense, from not missing your spells as much. So now these smaller changes, there are a ton of these, so we'll try and cover them as quick as possible, just kind of highlighting them very quickly, but mainly these are ones that Riot think are strong and with a little nudge could be played in the pro scene. The reason I even want to like touch on these, because some of them are quite small, is it should mean that at least some of these are decent for solo queue as well, and Riot maybe knows something we don't. So nerfs to start with. Elise's base AD is going to be down a little bit. One of the top tier champions for ganking, obviously. Might slow her clear speed down a little bit, but nothing too bad. Gragas is another one though that actually does suck, I think, for both top and jungle, getting his ultimate rank 1 20 seconds longer. In my opinion, I think he's better and competitive than solo queue anyway, so this is going to hurt like us players in solo queue a lot more. Lee Sin's base AD is down a little bit as well. Not massive, just a bit of a pain. But moving on to Rek'Sai, I'm not really sure if this is a nerf or a rebalance, to be honest, but basically early game Rek'Sai is worse, later game Rek'Sai is slightly better. Your Q is going to do less damage early but more later, and your R cooldown is more early but less later. That's basically the short version. Now moving on to the massive amount of buffs we have. Very small buffs, but like for example, Akali's Shroud cooldown is now slightly down. It is very minor, but it's harder to take advantage of her now. There's like a smaller window to engage, so she will be a bit better. Some of these are bigger, like Ekko's E cooldown is lower early ranks now, which is probably mainly for competitive. I bet Jensen will be pretty happy with this. Like Ekko is pretty decent as a counter to other assassins a little bit and mages, so he might be good now for solo queue as well. Irelia's ultimate cooldown is also lower early ranks. The top lane meta right now is not that bad for her. She's a decent counter to some matchups. She's good versus tanks, but she kind of fell out of the meta a bit. She could be strong though. Jinx Jinx's W zap cooldown though is going to go down 2 seconds at every rank, and this is really cool for lower ranks especially. Jinx is one of the most effective AD carries gold and below. It's going to help your poke, and when you have some AD behind it, it actually really hurts, but also kite more because now you have a shorter cooldown slow to kite people with. Kindred's Q damage is going to be up at 10 every rank, and actually Kindred is pretty strong I think if she gets her stacks, but she sucks early game and sucks without stacks. I'm guessing this is trying to help a little bit, but she's not really an easy or meta champion though. You might see her in some of the LCS games. Lissandra has a very minor buff, but I've actually seen her a bit more like this patch. Now everybody has a Dustblade. She's pretty good in the lane phase. She's kind of anti-assassin, which is also very good, and she can punish squishy champions by engaging and bursting them. So I wouldn't be surprised if we see her a bit more now. This one I would be surprised though. Like Lux's Q cooldown is going to be down early, which is a cool change, but I don't see why you would pick her when you have like Victor or Ziggs or Vel'Koz who do a similar job, but better in my opinion. The next one I think is aimed at pro play a little bit more than anything else, honestly. Malphite's E magic damage is up, and they're trying to make the tank meta a bit more varied because in the LCS we see like Gragas, Galio, and that's pretty much it, right? There's actually another one for Nautilus where his Q is doing more damage at early and your ultimate cooldown is going to be down early. So it's the same deal as Malphite really. They want to make other tanks viable again. Nautilus is kind of dangerous though because he does a lot of damage. So if you buff him too much, he will be so good with the new Abyssal Mask doing more magic damage. Nami has a Q cooldown down at every rank, but honestly she isn't that good in a tank meta. Like Braum is going to block her ultimate with his shield, and Blitzcrank like Thresh and stuff will kill her. In a mage matchup though, she could fill that middle ground more between a playmaker and a healer. Shyvana's base armor is also going to get a buff, and Marcy has been doing better recently, right? Maybe Shyvana is a similar story in right size, but isn't played as much. I'm really not sure about this one because I can't see why she's that good. Finally then, Ziggs W satchel cooldown is down a lot late game, like 6 seconds off it late game. He is one of the best poke champions right now in my opinion because you can run around the map and you can nuke towers, get gold that way without really ever having to fight. I think he punishes bad teams more than anybody else. Like if they don't engage super hard, then you're a very good pick for solo queue in my opinion because you can just poke over and over and get these towers for free. That was a lot of changes, especially at the end. Let me know what you think of all these changes though. Which ones are going to be the most impactful? Thank you for watching the video, but for now, I'll leave you with the robots.